Ken is there.
Thank you. All right, the meeting of the American Rescue Plan is being recorded.
Okay, it's 12:02, and we will call the meeting to order. And welcome our guest, Health Director Mansfield.
Thanks for having me.
Can we approve the minutes before?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? Okay. They are approved.
Motion, please, to add to the agenda today a survey update.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Cheryl, where would you like to put that?
Sometime after our speaker, for sure. I would say perhaps right after
Okay.
3A.
Sure. Thank you.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
I think in the last couple of years, we noticed that health departments do more than make certain that food service employees have warm water to wash their hands. And as much as we have been, the town has been not sitting on, but has received a request, as did everybody else in the district, for 1% of the ARP funds. And I thought, because we're reaching a point where we may start making recommendations for approvals, that we have Mr. Mansfield in, and he can answer any questions regarding the request. Now, I distributed all the materials that Steve had sent me, and that includes the original letter to the first selectman, the justification for that request, and there was something else.
There's a file of everything right here. If anybody needs to come.
Because we've already done it, I think. Dennis, do you have a copy of it?
Dennis has the letter.
I have the letter.
Yes.
Yep.
Spreadsheet? Does anyone need
I'll
it?
take a spreadsheet.
I have
I'll
it.
take one.
Are there
Thank you.
Okay.
I have it. Yep, thank you.
All right, so we're good?
Yep.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this request?
What's the total amount that 1% would represent if you get it all?
If we get it all, it would be just over $620,000 district-wide.
And how would that be spent?
So I can, if you'd like, I just give a brief presentation.
Yes.
On the same page? Sure. So if everybody remembers back in, I believe it was June or early July, we received notification that all of our member municipalities and all municipalities in the state would be eligible for ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan funding. Unfortunately, despite many discussions with folks up at Hartford, there was no specific funding that was allocated to local health districts. As you're probably aware, my district covers 10 municipalities, so unlike, say, the city of Hartford, the city of New Haven, whose health departments would receive money directly from their municipality, there was no mechanism for local health districts to take advantage of any of those efforts. So the first thing we did was sit down with all of the guidelines for how ARPA funding should and could be used, and made our wish list of things that, number one, we've already done in our response to COVID, or things we expected to have to do as the pandemic progressed. So if you look at this spreadsheet here that was just handed out, these are all the categories that we decided that we had already put into place or needed to put in place to better respond to the pandemic. As you're probably aware, the ARPA fund allocations have been widened dramatically. That is, there are a lot of things that are eligible now that weren't when the initial guidelines came out. So keep in mind this letter that I sent to Tim to First Selectman Griswold back in August was based on what we knew at the time. And here we are in February of 2022. So there have been some minor changes to our request, but the majority of the things that we put in place in terms of what specifically we're going to spend the money on, i.e. Public health nurse salary and fringe, expanding our epidemiological capacity, purchasing a mobile vaccination and testing van, those things have already happened. They've already been in place, and we've purchased the van and been using it for 6 months now. So regardless of whether any municipality decided to provide us with the 1% allocation that we requested, we're going to do these things anyway because it's part of our charge as the local health district for southeastern Connecticut.
Is it part of your budget or is it part of ARPA funds, which is a once and done?
It's part of ARPA funds, which is once and done. So this is separate and distinct from our annual per capita allocation that the town of Old Lyme and all of our municipalities give to us.
So those nurses will get laid off at the end of the period?
No. Actually, I'm not sure, Tom, did you forward the question and answer that I got to you? So that question was asked. I've done a number of these presentations at our respective municipalities, so that question is a very common one. The bottom line is the nurse that we just hired with this ARPA funds is part of our succession planning. Our current nurse, you may know her, Chris Magnuson, has not a definitive date, but she's going to be retiring in a couple of years. So this gave us an opportunity to hire Mary Day as our second public health nurse. She works directly under Chris Magnuson. So when these funds are expended, which I believe is in FY25, she will be funded through core funding.
So this is a bridge funding
Exactly.
transition.
It just happened to work that way. But to further just develop your question a little bit more, there are other positions that are funded. There are contact tracing positions that are funded. There are community health worker positions that are funded. We will either keep them on if we have funding to. We will move them to core funding if we feel the need to do so, or we will simply lay them off if the work is no longer necessary. So, for instance, if the CDC recommends to the Department of Public Health, who recommends to us that contact tracing is no longer needed, well, we have 3 full-time contact tracers that we currently don't have a use for because contact tracing isn't part of our functions anymore. However, we've gone to a great extent to hire people that we think will be a great fit for the organization moving forward. And I think when Chris Magnuson finally decides to retire, we have communicable disease work, we have emergency preparedness work, obviously all of our existing and continuing pandemic work, but we'll make that decision based on the needs of the district, as we always do. I think I can probably preempt a couple of questions by when you asked the question about the funding, core funding versus ARPA funding. All of our core funding, not all of our core funding, the majority of our core funding, our number one source of funding comes from member municipalities' contributions. This year, the budget that I presented to my board of directors in November that they approved, it won't be finally approved till April, but it always is. We just have to do that as a formality in April. We do it in November so we can present it to our municipalities so they can incorporate that money into their annual budget, know what they're getting into, so to speak. So I've been Director of Health for going on, I always forget if it's 7 or 8 years. Our per capita contributions from our member municipalities have been incredibly low. Throughout my tenure, most years we've brought forth a 0% increase, a flat budget, including this year. So the per capita contribution, which I believe it's $7.37 per capita for all of our municipalities, is flat again this year. We did have an increase last year. It was flat the previous 2 years. So we have a very strong fiscal record, and we don't expect that any spillover from these allocations, i.e. Employees that we hire with these ARPA funds, will have a negative effect on our per capita in the next few years. Of course we can't project what will happen 5 years out. Just last year, the State Department of Public Health essentially doubled our per capita allocation, state contribution to local health districts, which is great. That was unanticipated and due a lot to the work that we've done advocating on behalf of public health. But who knows what the next governor is going to do? I mean, in the past, they've taken the $1.85 per capita, multiplied it by our population, and then simply cut it by 50%. That went on for 5 years. So we always had to budget a significant decrease. We budgeted in this fiscal year for a 10% decrease, even though it didn't happen. So yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. But I think it's important to recognize that we're going to do this anyway. So I don't want you to think if you don't approve this money, it's not going to get done. It's part of our core functions, and we'll get it done either way. We do have a significant, what we call our designated fund balance, which is essentially a rainy day fund that I've built up over my tenure. So if we have, for instance, a lack of state per capita, I have a line item in my designated fund balance that says emergency funding, and that's to cover if some funding stream goes away that we've been counting on. We have an infrastructure. We have a fleet maintenance line item in this designated fund. So we're in good fiscal shape. If it doesn't happen, we'll do it anyway. But I think 1% of everyone's per capita allocation is a very reasonable request, and I'm not sure if this went out, Tom. It was updated, relatively recently. So of our 10 municipalities, I should add that Groton, Long Point, and Stonington Borough also received ARPA funds independent from their other municipalities. All of our municipalities have agreed to provide us with a 1% request, and the only ones that are pending are the City of Groton, Lyme, and Old Lyme. And the other 7 have approved it, and most of them have already cut us a check. So
I was going to ask that. So how many cut you the checks?
5, and then 2 have agreed to do it. As I said, 3, Groton City, Lyme, and Old Lyme, are still in process.
Okay.
I don't have any questions about the request at all. Thank you very much for what you do and what Ledgelight has done. My only question is more of a procedural question, and this could potentially impact me and other members, I don't know. Tom, you are affiliated with Ledgelight, correct?
Correct.
In what role?
On the board of directors,
Okay.
representing Old Lyme.
So my question is, what does the committee need to do to make sure that we are not running afoul of any conflict of interest or ethics guidelines, so that if anybody needs to recuse themselves from a vote, how do we do that? I know that I'm assuming that's a non-paid position you're in. I'm not asking that. That's immaterial.
Not even coffee, Rick.
Okay. I just want to make sure that at post-approval of anything, we didn't open ourselves up either as a committee or individually on voting yes in favor of something, if there could be some perceived conflict of interest. I can give you an example, if I could, real quick. It's possible that if there is some emergency request from emergency management provider, that I would need to potentially recuse myself because I have a professional relationship with somebody involved. So I'm looking for guidance for how we protect ourselves and do the right thing.
We might find that.
Well, you too could have, yes, I was thinking you
Because
too.
all of us represent a sector in the community
Right.
that, well, at least I do, that, when it comes to mental health, that we're the mental health organization. So I would assume we'd be a partner in something that would be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's a good question, and maybe recusing yourself from a vote and noting that in the minutes is good enough. I don't know. Maybe we need to get guidance from somebody else. I don't know.
I think that makes sense. If you feel you might have a conflict, to recuse yourself.
Yeah.
But again, Ledgelight is our public health service. It's part of our government function. It has a line item in our budget. we are, as a board, are making or as a committee, are making recommendations to the Board of Selectmen to approve. So anything we vote on here needs to go to the Board of Selectmen/Finance for approval. After that, after our last round about going to town meeting, I'm up in the air on that one personally, but I think our recommendation is just that. And then it will be up to the Board of Selectmen to make the actual approval.
So we're not authorizing funds, we're just making a recommendation to the selectmen.
I understand. I just want to prepare for,
Yeah, it's
there
gonna
will be
happen.
stakeholders that will feel alienated regardless of what the decisions that come out of this committee are.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that everybody is above reproach so that we are not in a position that said, well, you were self-dealing.
Maybe that's an issue we need to look into, because that's going to come up in occasions, even in addition to a legislative vote, right? So how do we...
We were all appointed based
Right.
on our experience
In
by
our
the Board of
sector.
Selectmen
Yeah.
for this. So I still say, if you feel you might be in jeopardy, then you should recuse yourself.
That works for me.
Yeah.
I just want to have it on record that that's what we've agreed that we do. Martha, what were your thoughts?
Steve, are any of your other board of directors sitting on an ARPA committee in their towns?
I was just going through each one of them that I'm aware of. I can't think of any. I'm not sure of that. There are absolutely board members who work on different commissions and are on planning and zoning review boards and things like that.
Okay.
We used to actually have a couple of municipal leaders on our board, Danielle Cheeseborough and Stonington, but currently we don't. So
Okay.
I think if I may, I think it's a very good point to be made. I think Tom brings a lot to this table because he knows the inner workings of Ledgely Health District and our budget and processes. So as long as you have a quorum, and you can do, it's always safe.
Yeah, it just so happens that this is the first such item that's come before the committee where I knew that potentially something could be there. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
Okay.
I have another question for you. What are you adding or have added under behavioral health outside of the Narcan?
I was going to ask about the Narcan, actually.
Okay.
That whole line I was interested in, so.
So a big part of what we do at Ledgely Health District is substance abuse prevention. We have different grants that we receive from different entities, and usually they're focused on certain communities that have significant problems that meet the requirements of the funder. But a lot of the work that one division of our organization does is substance abuse prevention, awareness, work with opiate issues in general, distributing Narcan.
But isn't that focused on Ledyard and Groton only?
No, it's district-wide.
It's district-wide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ledyard and Groton, well, talking about adolescent substance abuse prevention, yes, we have the Ledyard group, and we have GAS, Groton Adolescent Substance Abuse Prevention. But yes, those are specific to those towns, but not the opiate work we do. That is district-wide. It's regional.
So, I'm the director of the Youth Service Bureau here and the director of the Lyme Lyme Prevention Coalition, and I can't say that we've ever collaborated with Ledgely on anything related to that, but would love to. So.
We'd love to have you too. And I think that's one of the things, and all that has been part of Ledgely District for quite a while.
Yeah.
But I think one of, not to get too far off subject here, but when you have regionalization, a lot of the opportunities for funding are based on qualifications of the municipality. So for instance, when New London joined Ledgely Health District so many years ago, it opened up many opportunities for funding that we were not eligible for because our populations didn't meet the demographics, the requirements and so forth. So, I think that.
So how about behavioral health? What kinds of things has the additional funding allowed you to do with behavioral health?
So the New London Health Collaborative has a whole bunch of different components, and I would have brought Jennifer Muggio along because she's the person, she's my deputy director, and she is the lead on that. So they are the ones that focus, and again, it's a regional organization made up of healthcare providers and public health agencies and so forth. So this particular line item that we have in here will support not specifically that coalition, but all the work that coalition does. We We'll continue to do our outreach into the community. We hire navigators who are part of the community who can reach out to those individuals who may need substance abuse prevention services, connecting them with treatment centers and so forth. So this, I'm just looking at the line item. Obviously, it's one of the smaller of our line items.
Yeah.
So it will help to support that work. And again, I think it's a good example of something that's not directly related to the COVID response, but integral to our public health.
Well, I do think that, based on the results of our survey of the community, we have found that mental health was high on the list. And so definitely we're going to want to address that as a community. So I would say it's COVID related because there's such an increase in mental health issues as a result of COVID and isolation. And,
right. Yeah, I think when I was referring to COVID, our COVID response, vaccinating people, we vaccinated thousands of people and set up testing in all of our different municipalities. But you're right, even those services, we focused on the underserved segments of our population, those folks in those communities who, for whatever reason, are not getting vaccinated. Their vaccination rates are low. So we're still doing an occasional large and mass vaccination clinic, but we're focusing on communities, going to a lot of churches. Yesterday, it was a big success. We vaccinated 18 people. To get into the double digits at any of our clinics now is a big success because we have a high vaccination rate statewide and especially in our jurisdiction, but there are still pockets of our community that are significantly lower.
So went to the McDonald's in New London, right?
Yeah. And I can't remember the church that we went to yesterday, but they're successful. They're still labor intensive. It's honestly easier to set up a mass vaccination clinic and vaccinate 500 people. We roll our trucks in, we set our tables up, we get all of our Medical Reserve Corps volunteers, and we do it. It's still a lot of work to do, 18 people because we have to coordinate all the activities. And sometimes it's harder because everything has to be mobile rather than, our brick and mortar sites that are set up for us.
What are you currently doing with testing?
So it's a huge question. As you probably heard, Sema4's contract with the state of Connecticut ended January 31st. So we were fearful that the state of Connecticut wasn't going to be able to contract with another provider on February 1st, and then we'd have more of a dearth of testing available in our area. Luckily, Jen Muggio, our deputy director, worked directly with all of the people who coordinate the testing, and Genesis Healthcare was the one that came in and essentially stepped in for Sema4 and provide testing services. So we coordinate the logistics of where we're going to do the testing. We work with the municipality to make sure that we're up and running. We have generators, we have tents, and so forth. So this morning, my staff was out there in the Crystal Mall parking lot at 6 a.m. setting up for their clinic. And we have 4 clinics per week.
Are you still seeing the surge that there was after Christmas?
No, it's a good point. So we're seeing about half the number of people that we saw even 2 weeks ago. So I happened to fill in for Jen at our Stonington clinic. She was in quarantine, or isolation actually, and we literally ran out of available test kits before it even opened, before the clinic even opened.
This is when? Before Christmas? At Christmas time?
No, just 2 weeks ago.
Oh. So you're still seeing a great demand for is this PCR testing?
Yes. Yep.
And so is there any ability through additional funding to expand that?
There really isn't a need. We have more tests than people who want them at this point in time. Now, 3 weeks ago, that wouldn't have been the case. But there weren't enough providers out there, and I'm not trying to be critical of the state's program, but what they did when they saw the first surge in the pandemic, they set up a very robust testing program across the state. Before they did that, Ledgelight had already set up testing in Groton and London, those 2 centers where we thought there was the most need. So we partnered with Sema4 before the state set up the state-sponsored testing sites. And that was a great program, and they tested tons of people. I actually beta tested the one down on Long Wharf in New Haven at the very beginning of the pandemic. But then, as our numbers went down, and you look at the graph, the federal money went away, and they basically let the testing sites flounder. So there wasn't adequate testing when we saw the second surge with the variant. And then everybody was scrambling to get up and running. I think, unfortunately, it was too little too late, because by the time we have, added additional sites to our and expanded our hours, now the demand is down again. So what we want to assure happens is if we do have another surge, if there's a new variant, that we have those testing providers in the wings that are ready to go, so we don't see what we saw, and that is turning away hundreds of people at our clinics. There just wasn't enough. And also the availability of at-home testing kits and the changes in the protocols and procedures about when you can use them or when you should use them, I think that made a big difference as well. They're available if you go to CVS, and most municipalities did a distribution program. So that lessens.
Has anyone received their federal tests yet? I haven't.
I have.
No, but I have
Did?
Oh, wow.
I have a friend who did in northern Connecticut.
Okay, so they're coming slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So the testing center you've set up in the Crystal Mall parking lot today or
Yep.
How do people learn about that? Is that when you go on the state website and look for a place?
Yeah, so it's pretty much any state-supported testing site is, if you Google a state-supported testing site, it will give you a list of all of them. It's on our website, it's on our municipal website. We do press releases to all of the local papers.
211 also, Cheryl. 211, you just go in, put your zip code in, it shows you everything.
Yeah.
Right.
If you go to Ledgelight's homepage and it says you need a test, you click on it, lists all the testing sites, when they're open, and so forth. So we haven't heard anyone calling to say I can't find a test. There's plenty of testing out there at this point in time.
And what is the return time on the results?
It's getting better. That was actually the reason why Semaphore was cutting off. We would do 400 or 500 people in one testing event, and then they started lowering that number. And it's not because they didn't have enough test kits, it's because they didn't have the bandwidth to do the testing back at the laboratory. So they would say only 200 today. So we would literally have a counter, and I did that one day, where you count people as they're getting in line, and then once you hit 198, you simply tell the police, block off the driveway and turn people away. Because the last thing we wanted is people to sit in line for 2 hours and then say, sorry, we're out. They still weren't happy when they were turned away, but at least they didn't have to wait.
So the testing sites are open to anyone in the state also, correct? So.
And they're free to anyone. If you have testing, the providers ask for, if you have insurance, they ask for your information. But if you don't have it, you get tested anyway.
So Steve, one of the things we talked about was potentially seeing if we could have a pop-up clinic for testing every now and then. It sounds like at this point that may not be where you're seeing the need to plan like a monthly.
Well, if there is a need, we can absolutely make that happen. There are, as I said, a number of providers, and we try to spread it out so we cover our district. We cover a lot of geographical area, and where people are who may have a greater need for free testing services. You can get tested. You can go to any pharmacy now and buy test kits that are great for testing to see if, especially if you're symptomatic, they're really good. But there are absolutely communities that are more in need.
I know in the beginning, Mary Jo, we had people like, I want to get my vaccine in Old Lyme. I want to get my test in Old Lyme. I haven't heard it so much lately, but.
We're at 12:30. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time to get through everything else. What is our goal for today with regard to Ledgelight?
I would say, first off, thanks, Steve, for clarifying everything that he submitted, and take these two documents and be able to keep them as a starting point once we finish the application project.
I think this falls under a different category than the application project.
Okay.
I think that this is something that other towns have made recommendations from their committees to their Board of Selectmen or to their government officers and have moved forward.
Then maybe we could have a discussion and move forward on it today.
I would tend to agree with you, Martha.
I would too.
Yep.
I do too.
I mean, you would take the money when everyone gave it to you, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
I can't take cash here, but
Well, it still has to go through the.
Yeah, the thing,
Right,
don't
we discussed.
Yes.
So I would make a motion that the committee approve the 1% as requested by LLHD
I will second that.
in an emergency, in an immediate,
Urgent?
in an urgent need to be presented to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance.
I agree. I'll second that.
My only
Discussion?
concern is what I've expressed before, and then, like you said, Martha, maybe this falls differently, but we've been asked for money by the ambulance, by the restaurants, by other people, and we've said, wait.
My view is that this is different.
Okay, just want to put it out there.
That's my personal view.
They are servicing
Oh, I
our health needs
agree.
in our district, and I understand the ambulance, but they want a stretcher, and the ambulance isn't even here, so, I mean, there's some
I'm putting
things,
it on the table so that we're all,
other towns have done this, and I have a tendency to believe that we can follow suit in that same manner, and then, I mean, we're a little late on our applications, I feel,
I don't
but
know if we're late, we're just,
due diligence.
we're due
we're doing
diligence.
our due diligence.
No, I
yeah.
mean, there were other requests that came into us, like Legislates, where an entity was asking every town they serve to devote X percent.
Right.
Right? And so we're not looking at those right now. I think Legislate is currently doing clinics and it's a little different than a stretcher that's not here yet or, and I believe we're going to be addressing the stretcher in like 2 months. I think it's not like,
Your point is a good one, Jen. My personal feeling is that this falls in a unique category, just as I thought testing fell within a unique category. That's my personal thought.
I agree.
I think you're on target, Rick.
Yeah. I would only add that the wording of the motion, we're not approving.
We're recommending.
We're choosing to refer to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, no, that we agree, or what, we need a terminology for that.
recommend.
We need
Recommend.
to agree to recommend, or we
Yeah.
need to approve the recommendation. It's the recommendation that we have to get to, so I think we need to agree on that terminology.
Is it appropriate for me to participate in the discussion?
You can sit and listen.
I just have a question. So has the town of Old Lyme allocated any of the ARPA funding to municipal functions?
Nothing.
No.
So Dave didn't get anything, the fire?
Not yet.
Okay, got it.
You're the first.
Everybody else.
I retract.
Update, amend?
I amend my motion to read as follows. I make a motion that the ARPC agree to recommend to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance the payment of 1% of its ARPA funds as requested by Ledgelight Health District.
Second.
Discussion. The 1%. Can I discuss? Oh, okay. Since we only got half of our tranche, the other towns went ahead and just did the 1% based on the full
No,
amount.
we've got our full tranche.
We got one half of our tranche. We're going to get the tranche in June.
I don't think that's accurate. I think. Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's all right. So the other towns went ahead and estimated their 1% based on both allocations that they're going to get, correct?
That's correct, except for the City of New London. They allocated 50% because that's what they did. That's their process. So they'll go through,
Okay.
they've agreed
Yeah.
that we should get the funding, but when they get
Okay.
the rest of their money, so.
Okay, thank you. So when the motion is the 1%, meaning the 1% over the full
ARPA.
commitment from the federal government to us, okay. I just
Call
wanted
for
to,
vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All
anybody
Unanimous.
against?
opposed? Nay? Anyone?
Does Tom
Tom, are you?
Or any abstentions?
Abstaining, Tom?
He doesn't have to abstain.
He doesn't have to.
I'm-
He's only making the recommendation.
Okay.
I think he's,
Yeah.
Unanimous.
yes, okay.
There you go.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.
Board of Selectmen meets on Monday. I don't know if it's too late to add this to the agenda.
I think it's okay. I think we can,
We can squeeze it in?
yes.
I do wish we had more that we could give, honestly.
Oh, thank you. And if someone would like me to attend the meeting of the Board of Selectmen, just let me know. I'm happy to come. If I can't, my deputy
Be
director.
on there.
Yeah. What?
No, because Phil couldn't come. Is there anyone on the phone on the ARPA committee? Is there anyone on the phone? Is the phone on?
Happy to connect and something that
Oh, I
I
didn't
think
bring my card.
we're
Thank you, Steve.
a little delinquent at.
Line prevention coordinator? Where's this?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, great.
That's great there.
Yep.
Okay, so Cheryl, we're going to move on.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, I have to leave the meeting.
Okay.
So I'm going to be heading back
We'll
to
miss
my
you.
office, but I was glad to be here for that vote, okay?
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Tom.
You don't want to take them? Okay. Survey update, Cheryl?
All set?
Okay.
Okay. I have found an additional 5.5 surveys that were manually done. My fault, I thought they were part of the recycling of blank surveys. And before I threw them out, I found these 5. So I manually inputted them last night, and I can send out to you the new exact percentages for everyone. The categories pretty much hold the same in terms of their rankings. The only thing is by 0.12%, nonprofit assistance is ahead of small business. And they have been neck and neck the whole time. So they're basically the same in my mind.
So 67.2 versus 67.32 for nonprofit.
Yeah. So my apologies that I had not seen that earlier. Martha, you were saying you would like a copy of the survey results. So what I'm going to do, now that we have this updated edition, I will email you all an updated survey summary as well as my little chart with the new and old published rankings. And I will say there were no comments that would really change any of your category analysis. There was this one in-depth review of what the Lions Club does. Other than that, there was nothing really, outstanding in terms of comments. Any questions? Okay, that's it.
5 more responses is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, when you get that,
Yep, I'll send that tonight.
then I'll upload and, okay. 4, clarification of requirements for the town meeting.
Yes, because that came up regarding the allocation for tests, where Town Attorney Collins said, no, absolutely, this does have to go for town meeting. And Finance had given us a different interpretation. I think we want to know what's going forward. And, I mean, that might not impact anything we do if we're targeting a June 30th omnibus recommendation. But as we reach a point where we can make immediate recommendations, as we have just discussed.
So Jack is saying that we have to go to town meeting for every single allocation?
and I distributed the letter that came back from Tim, and there was no explanation as to why his opinion was different. It's just that he had made the recommendation that.
So I do think we need to have the Board of Selectmen figure this out.
Okay.
I think the Board of Selectmen needs to see if the town attorney is recommending us giving a legal opinion, it should be in writing. We should be able to see what the process is.
And cite it.
Exactly, and I think the only thing that I could think about how that may affect this group is that we may have to allocate our recommendations as a group to get those to the Board of Selectmen so they have time to evaluate and get it to a town meeting if we have to do that.
Can have a lot of town meetings.
Yeah, so that would impact our, Dave, you had mentioned the timing of that, right? That would impact when we would have to have this complete, correct? Am I understanding this correctly?
If it has to go to town meeting, you've got the overall town meeting to accept the budget in May.
Well, they probably have to have a special town meeting.
Okay.
Sometimes they have them in August, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
We can have a special town meeting at any time.
you think we can? Okay.
Yes.
You have to
You
notice,
can, but you have to go through the
You have to just go through the process.
process.
Right. So
Because I think we're going to need all of the time that we have allocated.
Yeah.
Can the Board of Selectmen define the information they need in our recommendation in order to approve it?
Oh, that's a good point.
That's very,
Because otherwise, we're being presumptuous, where we're defining what we think they want to hear from us.
Yep.
And without any confirmation from them, we don't know.
I can ask.
But that's one of my questions going through our assignment, which was to develop an application, or look at applications other towns.
Yeah.
I got myself really in the paper trail of what the heck. But one of the final recommendation came out of the final rule was that the towns are now given more flexibility in how they use their funds for general government services. They can take their allocation as a special allowance, and which means then the town could use those ARPA dollars
itemized
for
allowance,
general.
I think is the term.
Pardon me?
I think it's itemized allowance.
Okay, this is the guy who knows this.
Yeah.
It's a special an itemized allowance that they can use it for services that are generally associated with government services.
As long as it's under $10 million, my understanding,
Yep.
if I may,
Yep, please.
is that the town can elect this streamlined administration of its ARPA funds and its reporting requirements. Now, that's my understanding based on the reading and also a video that was put together
Treasury Department.
by the Treasury Department. So,
You are correct.
okay, so that's different from what we were originally operating under. So I think that that does potentially impact positively what we would expect cost-wise from an administration standpoint. I think we just have to understand that it would be nice if we could get from the town whether they are going to elect that.
So I think we should invite Tim. We could put this on, we can discuss it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, but I think we should invite Tim to our next meeting.
I think that's a great idea. I also think we should ask Nicole, who's had some discussions with our auditors on what their recommendation for the funding is.
Okay?
And with the invitation, we ought to define the question that we have so he can have the answer before he comes.
Yes.
Does it also matter what the Board of Finance is going to, to Dennis's question? Do we also look at what the Board of Finance is going to want from the Board of Selectmen and
Yeah.
bringing that recommendation forward?
Well, if we have a meeting on Monday, Board of Selectmen meets Monday, Board of Finance meets Tuesday, they could get it on their agenda as well, and then we meet Wednesday. So,
The standard allowance.
and I have a quick meeting with Tim right after this, so I'll bring all this to his attention and see if we can make that process happen.
So that kind of dovetails into the application process as well, because as Dave had forwarded to everybody the update on the COG RFP that's going out, I think I at least initially thought that part of what COG value proposition would include the administration aspect of it.
That is part of their RFP and their proposal project.
So if we don't have to earmark funds to pay for that, positively, that's more funds that we have available that we could distribute for whatever the committee agrees on. But I also think that we would be well advised as a committee to try to use some standardized application process that has been put together by a COG or a COG-like organization.
I'm not so sure the COG has put together. I mean, I could be really wrong, but I don't know if they have put together an application process.
I believe that that's one of the things they were looking at in their RFP, was to obtain an application in addition to what's the word I'm looking for? An administration element of it, tracking and reporting.
Right.
When they presented to us, I think that's part of what they said.
That's what I understood.
If there's another resource that we want to pursue, I think the time for us to pursue it is now, since we're talking about applications now, a process now.
And I have a question for Nicole. Nicole, the first report is due in April. Do we, I mean, obviously, assuming the Board of Selectmen decide if they can approve the ledge-like recommendation of the Board of Finance without having to go to town meeting, that check could be cut soon, theoretically. If it doesn't,
Right, so just to go back on the 10 million thing we were talking about. Yes, obviously, this portal, I don't know that we have the COG, I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to enter all the stuff in the portal we have? Meaning, are they going to elect the 10 million? Are they going to administer the subcontractors? Because, like, even the money that you're going to give legislate, the town is required to follow up with them and make sure they adhere to all the grant requirements, like lobby stuff, discrimination policies, and all that stuff. So there's a lot more than just giving them people a check. We're required to make sure they're adhering, or whoever has it, they're adhering to all the list of requirements in the feds that we are. We're just kind of doling out money. So I think someone has to figure out the cost, what they're going to do, what are we going to have them do. Because I could go on probably now and left because I've been watching things, but I don't know how that's going to impact what they're doing on our people.
Is my understanding that if that is elected, the standard allowance, that it would reduce at least some of the ongoing reporting requirements? Or did I not read that properly?
I think so. It gets you out of doing a huge calculation on revenue loss. I don't even know that we would qualify for revenue loss.
Right.
So,
right.
But the calculation is payments,
Mm-hmm.
so it would probably leave the town, me, but I don't know that it would affect you guys any really, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read that too.
Yeah.
So I hope there's more than just the fact that you can elect, take it as the standard allowance. I guess that's
Yeah.
But they pushed that, our auditing firms are pushing that as well.
Yeah.
Should do that. Okay. The other thing I just wanted to say that we've received grants that is restricted for certain purposes. And as such, that money has been put into a restricted bank account and a restricted fund, so to speak. We have other funds that we do that with as well. We have money in grant funds, we take money for retail, all those kinds of things. And once it's put into those funds, it's restricted for those funds. So this doesn't have to go through the regular operating budget that we go through every year. I don't know if that brings that up. It is, can be said if it's in compliance with the description. So it's really up to the town, but it doesn't have to go to town meeting. It's really up to the town that, and I would say the board of selectmen, what approval process do we want? So they've already set up this committee, and this will be a recommendation to them. I don't even think you need the board of finance to be involved, but that would be the board of selectmen decision. So that's kind of how I see it.
That's-
I mean, we can cut a check tomorrow if the board of selectmen decided.
That's,
Right.
but I thought Jack said it had to go to town meeting.
But perhaps does he know it's a restricted fund?
I don't know, but I think that he needs to get the newest initial summary and read it, and I think he needs to be updated on that, so I will talk to him. I will take that on and get that to him.
I haven't included in any of that, so I don't even know.
No, I know, and I'm just gonna,
All kind of telephone language is why it's important we figure this out.
because,
The first report is due in April.
right,
In May, we're not on board with the cost, which I agree with Tracy. The town may be responsible for that initial reporting with all that software.
Right, so that's a big deal to figure out
It's a
when
big deal.
COG is doing it, if they're doing it.
Well, we had discussed that we were going to interview COG once they had this together to see if they had a, I'm going to use the term out-of-the-box solution for us to use. Right?
I might be mistaken. I just didn't take their most updated email as indicating that they were going to do an application process. I felt it was more the administration of funds, and that's what they were working on their RFP for, that they would help us dealing with that end of it. I didn't think that they were going to do the other, but I could be totally incorrect.
Yeah, and as did I.
Well, that definitely came up in our discussion, so maybe they are telling us they're not going to do it, but we
Yeah.
need to ask that specific question for sure. So do you want to ask that of them, Dave?
Yep.
But could you please put us all on the email so that we all see the answers, like,
So your questions are, shoot.
Are they going to be taking, as part of their RFP process, are they going to be taking on the reporting responsibilities of all the towns that sign up with them?
And the subsequent monitoring, because it's gonna go on, for the one.
And a standardized application.
and are they doing,
And underwriting.
right,
That's definitely, we discussed that definitely. Whether or not they've changed, I don't know, but we definitely discussed.
well, and they may have,
And the good news to Jen's comment about the ambulance, if the town does opt to go with the standard
allowance.
standard allowance, ambulances and police vehicles are all allowed under that. It's
Yes.
very clear. So if we didn't take just the public health option, ambulances are definitely included in that. Now, the one thing I found that surprised the heck out of me is that under the infrastructure allotment, flooding mitigation projects are not allowed. It took me a while to find it, but it's very clear that they're not. Now, so anything we would undertake or recommend that has that allocation, it would have to be for some other function besides flood mitigation. So I just throw that out there.
Or something else.
Yeah.
What did you say, Jen?
Clean water.
oh, drinking water, it's big, but,
Well, I, as a layman, I read the full final rule and the summary. And I come back with the same question that I had before I reread everything. I'm going to quote, approved, eligible, under CWSRF. Management and treatment of stormwater and subsurface drainage. Not approved. Floodplain management and flood mitigation projects more generally. Jane Sixpack on the street is not gonna know any difference between those two. Rick Stout doesn't know the difference between those two. And I think we should get a letter of legal opinion on whether or not and what we can do with respect to those sewer items.
The sewer is different from the Miami Beach crib and pipe request.
That's a groundwater.
Yes, thank you, and it should include that as well. I mean, I'm assuming that is permissible, but I don't know that.
And it's the crib is flooding, not clean water.
Exactly.
So,
Or
does
no.
that make sense to anybody, what I just read? I
I
mean,
believe the crib is a groundwater discharge issue.
Well, but does that fall under flooding?
I don't
Or does
know.
that fall under clean water?
All the emails that we got was about flooding. So I think, the long story short is we don't have any engineering report. We have individuals saying, I'm getting flooded, and then somebody else saying, oh, it's because we're having groundwater issues. Who the heck knows? We need an engineering report to make any decision on that, and we do not have that.
Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to bring that up only because I don't think this committee is equipped, has the background, does not have the scientific documentation to support a response on that.
I agree. Now that we have the survey results, being able to take this back to Phil and come up with some more detailed information on it. Let him do as representation of infrastructure. I think it falls into their fold. You got one in the back.
Nicole?
I just, again, was looking at the COG because I thought the COG was going to hire a consultant to provide us that kind of guidance and put their money where their mouth is, so we have a piece of paper from somebody,
Yep.
not just Phil,
Yeah.
and nothing against Phil, but
Yeah.
nothing,
All right.
I don't know either.
no, we all want to stand firmly on whatever our,
All right, Rick, I know we're pushing on time.
yeah.
I did reach out to Sam Gold, and he's willing to do a speakerphone with any questions that you may have. If you want me to call him.
It's up to you, Tom. My only reason for bringing that up was I don't know how we can form a committee to create an application if we don't have that answered yet.
Well, just a reminder, what Sam had said was that they're still talking to the Middlesex County Revitalization Committee.
Yes.
I thought it was the
Chamber.
the foundation on vetting small business grants. So it's part of that vetting, is that creating the application? As you're saying, Martha, there's no reference to an application in this.
Well, he's willing to speak over my phone to the group if you want. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think he has to propose something, an RFP to the town or something, because you see a lot there, a lot of towns are hiring consultants to do this or auditors to do this, and I think you gotta know what client's gonna be like.
Here's what I think we should do. I think we should put a list of questions together for Sam. And I think we should put those together, send them all to one person. That person sends it off to Sam, because I think the answers should be in writing, not just verbal, that we all tend to hear something different. And then if we need follow-up, we can respond for follow-up.
I'm willing to take point on that.
That makes sense.
If you email me your questions and just put RiverCog questions in the subject matter,
Okay.
so it doesn't get lost in my emails.
Okay.
I will compile those. Say we do that by the end of the week, I'll spit that out Friday afternoon.
So please include all of us on it, so
Yep.
that, because we're going to have some alike
Right,
questions.
so we don't duplicate.
And not only that, but we can always revise. If you see it, we can build upon a question if we need to.
And as
Okay.
succinct as possible, right?
Yes.
As I receive those, I'll put them into a chronological order and send them all at the end of the week. End of business on Friday, I'll shoot them off to him, along with copies to all of you, or
Okay.
to all of you.
Try not to do chronological, try to do,
Well-
if it's about applications,
Yeah.
category-wise. more, so that we
What
live
about the
organized.
legal opinion on
I'm gonna hit Jack up.
water and sewer and the beach communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real issue for this committee, because I think that, you know, the respondees are clearly thinking that anything and everything that has to do with water falls within this.
That's right.
And I know that no matter what we decide, it's going to be criticized and scrutinized, and we may not, even if we can do it, we may as a committee decide that that's not the highest and best use of our funds because of our limitations. But I think if we have a legal letter of opinion, we at least know what we can bring forward.
So do you want to ask that question to Sam? I mean, or do you,
I don't have an answer.
or do you want that to be from Jack?
Maybe both. I mean, the legal opinion has to come from Jack. Sam's not a town attorney.
Right.
But it would be, I think one of the things we're hearing here is we want to, if we can get some regionalization, some continuity, we're doing our due diligence. We're doing what our neighbors are doing. We're not doing our, necessarily, we can't be blamed for doing an old live thing when nobody else is doing it. So
This does not need to be decided today.
No.
It does not. It does not. I just raised the point because we're going to have this as an issue. And I don't think we have the time to get this for today.
Okay. So I'm going to have Jack give us a written response to the process of the way he sees that it has to happen
Regarding the town meeting?
regarding town meetings, does it need to go Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, et cetera. And I'm going to ask Tim. Tom, do you want to ask him, or do you want me to ask him if he'll come next week?
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Next meeting.
Okay.
On the 16th.
16th. So we have plenty of time to get that through. And we shall go from there.
Okay, are you going to bring that up to Tim?
It's up to you. Do you want to ask him, or do you want me to ask
Why
him?
don't you do that?
All right, I will shoot you a response, and then I'll put him on it as well.
So we're tabling this right now. This is Mary Jo's draft of,
Can I just ask you,
I sent that to you.
can I just ask you how many towns, in your research, how many towns have already done their application type of process?
I couldn't answer that. I just went Googled a lot of things. A lot of towns have.
Yep.
And it runs the gamut from being a very basic, like y'all come, to an extremely detailed process. So one of my bullet points, I actually focused on sort of the preamble to the application, what we have to do to tell people why we're doing this, for example. And then I had some questions for our committee to consider. Anything we do in our application has to dovetail into our reporting. There has to be some connection to that. Either if for the communities that are keeping it very broad, I don't know how they're making that connection. I don't see that. Do they have a separate section or group of people then reach out to the applicants or the recipients to fill in all that? The example, the things that I was talking about. In some towns, they actually have these people go online and fill out quite an extensive set of criteria to make sure that the ARPA funds are being used for what's required.
I would expect that.
So
And follow-up. There are a couple of towns that are requesting them to follow up with what they're
Well,
using
and
the funds
that's
for.
to Nicole's point, if you give somebody the full amount, that's one of my questions, or do you give it out quarterly?
Right. Good point.
You know, so there's a lot of, so it'd be great to see what other towns are doing, but it's all over, from my Googling, it's all over the board. Now, I also don't know if the state has anybody available to help us. Has anybody heard that?
I have not heard that, no.
Okay.
I can ask. I got a few connections there.
In addition to the application itself, do we have to discuss what type of applications we want to get? So here's an example.
Right.
You know, we're seeing mental health isolation as an issue. it may not be that the senior center comes up with, gosh, maybe we can, put in for a grant for some sort of mental health assistance for seniors. I'm just making this up. Do we say to the senior center, can you all think about ways to address this mental health issue? Do we, if there are small business grants, only the small businesses that read Limelight or CT Examiner are going to necessarily be paying attention to do that? How do we, does the EDC have an open house for all businesses to come in and learn about the grant opportunity? I feel like there's something even before the application where
there is, because we had said at the outset that what the committee was going to do was get the survey results and then decide as a committee what the areas of focus were going to be.
And but those areas of focus would be on the top of this is my interpretation, or my thought, be on the top of the application. You would check which category you're applying for funding from, and based on the number of applications we would get, we would sort of divvy up. If you only get one for, I'm not saying we are, but one for nonprofits, then your pot of, you're not gonna put
it's a pothole amount.
Right.
That's kind of what Greenwich did on their application. It's multi-paged, but at the top of it is they have the applicants identify in what area they're asking for money.
So what are those? Can you just read those?
This one is sewer division. Clearly, they've made a decision to take their application. Their
standard
allowance. So there's direction from the town as to the criteria, the area they're going to focus on. So that's what they put on their application at the top. Economic impact, water, sewer, broadband are the other categories that people could eligibly choose to write their project description, statement of need, their financials, who the key stakeholders are. So I just pulled off these and I'll hand them out. One is a pump station upgrade. One is technology upgrade. One is behavioral health initiative, HVAC upgrades, and affordable housing trust fund. So if you go onto the Greenwich webpage, they've got their first selectman has identified their key areas, and then they have this application of the projects that they're looking at, and then they'll decide. But it has the key financials, so they, in April they can at least get their interim report done. Some at Stonington did similar. They have a huge document. I only printed out half of it, but it has the ARPA funds table of contents, and it gives the purpose, what they're doing, and then the first selectman has indicated the projects they've received. For example, Town Hall Human Services HVAC, how much is the cost of it, how much they're requesting from ARPA, salt dome replacement, child and family.
Mary Jo, let me ask this. Stonington is a little bit more comparable in size than Fairfield is. Who did this? Who made this document?
Well, this one has the American Trust Fund, Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
No, I'm saying who for the town actually wrote this on a piece of paper?
There's a page in here that the health department wrote a whole proposal.
They went out,
send out an RFP for mental health professionals.
So they reached, in that case,
that would be you, Jen.
They went out, they made the decisions of what they were going to be spending the money, and then they had their department leads.
So their existing town hall employees did all this?
Or functions, yeah. So it's similar to what Cheryl was saying. Some of the towns had meetings with the people to bring them in to say this is what we're going to do, or they did a video and they put that on the website. It runs all the gamut.
I just tend to see, like, it's a town's job description to do.
Yeah. In Stonington, although they have a lot of staff, obviously, they also have something like a position called town manager. And it's like a town manager. And in addition, they have like our, and stuff. But that person kind of oversees a lot of this, and he's got a lot of that. We don't have to push a lot. And even the finance office, there's 5 people, that's just in town hall, the pool has a lot bigger, a lot more bigger.
We don't really have a
We
couple
are
there.
volunteer, we don't
Exactly,
have employees there.
exactly. I agree.
Well, I think this comes back to COG or
Yeah,
COG-like,
yeah.
Right,
where we are.
yep.
I personally think that we have to have that answered first.
Okay, so questions to Dave by, today's Wednesday, by Friday.
Yep.
Okay? All right. Do we have any further discussion? Do we want to develop a subgroup? We have that on the agenda? Or do you want to wait until we get the answers?
Yeah, wait till next time.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to send out, if I can find it in the, what I had drafted, and give everybody a copy, but I only sent it to Tom for consideration, but a lot of the questions that we talked about today are kind of as a result of that. And these may be questions that we want to send to the COG. And maybe they know what other towns are doing in this regard.
So East, am I taking one?
Yeah, could you?
Thank you.
East Windsor, the town that we talked about several weeks ago, my understanding is they created these categories, like we want to help small businesses, and then they created an application for a small
That's my
business.
understanding as
No,
well.
no, they hired a consultant to do that.
They did.
They did.
True.
And outside.
Dave, will you take that and pass it along?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just looked up at Windsor last week for our last discussion. They did hire a consultant to manage the grant. They spent $25,000 on it.
From the grant.
Yeah.
So they paid him 25
For her.
for her. I think it was for him, but
Yeah, Steve something, I have something on research.
But part of the requirements is to complete all required report filings and maintain all backup documentation.
Yep.
right. And that's, I mean, you know what? In a small town, we need somebody like
We
that.
couldn't
Yep,
possibly
exactly.
recreate that. We couldn't recreate it for 25,000.
Yep.
I don't
We all sat here for 5 days straight and.
I don't think we could, because well, first of all, we're not doing this.
No, we're not.
We're making the recommendation.
Right.
We have to be
Okay.
realistic.
But we do, I think, have to have a very strong plan moving forward. Okay, so is there anything else? Then, new business?
I think I'd like to just ask Nicole if she has some thoughts on how we're going to do the April reporting if we don't have a contract with somebody else. Do we have a plan B of April?
Then I'll have to do it. Because I'm the contact, probably, for the portal of the state and the.
So there's 3 people under reporting, 3 functions that have to be named.
Yeah, take a picture.
So I guess what I'm, it's you, but you're allowed to have a support staff.
There's no one here.
Well,
So it would probably just be me.
I'm volunteering.
It's all stuff on the portal and
I know.
then anything that gets reported, anything we do, not only is it gonna get audited by the Treasury Department, it's gonna get audited by my auditor. So if I'm a conduit for money, I still have to make sure I've given those board people all the direction and they have to put that to me and yes, here are the people that deserve mental health and they have to have documentation as well. So I figure it's all gonna have to come in my office anyway. But if the COG is gonna do any of that, it's gonna be, to know upfront. It would help if they could think from the beginning that we will need both. A lot of stuff.
What are the auditors, they audit other towns, what do the other towns do? They're not necessarily at the top, but.
Well, places like Stonington or Ron, I saw Ron told Ron how they did it, it's trying to hire an employee, clean up this thing. Some hired their auditors, I believe they're offered to consult as well. I looked into that, I don't know what level of service they want to provide, whether they just do everything and then I put it on the portal or things like that, so I'm not sure. So-
Can you check with them? And ask them if they're doing it for anyone else? And if they are, would they consider doing it for us? And,
What they think the cost might be.
yeah,
Okay.
general idea. Because
Thank you.
anything else? Is there any public comment? Anyone on the phone for public comment? Okay, hearing none. We're at adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Bye.
Next meeting's in 2 weeks?